different different config files or topic. Okay.
Okay.
So basically, in order to do any development in our manuscript, then we need to have configuration files in our local.
Yeah.
Okay. Like there are only 3 files need to be there in our local in order to do an execution in our local and execute it. Okay. So what
Yeah.
are those 3 files? One is like this is the path. Okay. So you can see in the picture. This is the path for that Express. In Express, we'll be having a config file and another is like in web, we'll be having a web.config file, and another one is like shared, we'll be having server.config file. These are the 3 major config files we need to have in order to do an coding.
Okay.
What are the changes you have done or you have developed in the manuscript that need to be executed on the UI, in the Chrome. So for that, we need to have the configuration files in our local.
Yeah.
Okay. What will be there in web.config file? So this is the XML file where we'll be having by default this code will be there. This will be provided by your development team. Okay. You need not do it manually.
Okay.
Okay. This is what in web.config file is there, like URL and timeout, these all are there. Okay.
Yeah.
And next one is web.config file in web file. Okay, this is the thing, it's there in that web.config file.
Yeah.
And next one is like in shared server.config file. Okay. Here in shared will be having this, and in between it this shared, you can see like local URL. Okay. The same URL should be there. What are the URL you are working in your local, the ID, and in server, the URL ID should be same. Then only your execution will be working properly on the Express.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Next, transact rules. So what I mean, like there are some transact rules in order to execute the transactions in our local. Okay. In the manuscript, what like context, rules like context, transaction status, transaction state, policy states, statuses. Okay. Transaction context is nothing but normal, like as we already discussed in the transactions. Okay, different types of transactions. Transaction status is nothing but transaction status describes the position of the transaction in the transaction business process. Transaction statuses are business related and business defined. When a transaction status changes, the system adds an activity log to the policy, attaches a message or sets the description of the transaction in current state in the policy data. So basically status is nothing but like this: approved, closed, committed, declined, pending, referred, and scheduled. Okay. These are some of the few status, which are a policy status is nothing but a transaction status as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does this approved do? Transaction has been approved and is waiting for the approval. Okay. That means waiting for the committal. It's waiting for the policy to be committed.
Okay.
Closed. A transaction has been completed in the example data database, but has not been reconciled in the downstream system. Sorry. Committed. The transaction has been completed in on system. Okay. After committed, nothing will be there. It means you have done all other operations as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Decline. Transaction has been rejected by an underwriter. So when you decline any policy, that means you have rejected that particular transaction and you cannot do any changes later as well. Okay. Pending. Transaction is awaiting committal. So after pending, you need to do a committal. If you don't do a commit, if you don't commit the policy, now it will still represent that particular policy or transaction is in pending status itself. Referred. Transaction is awaiting for the approval. So basically, when you are having an underwriter referral code or referral for the waiting for referral to underwriter and agent, then in that case it will be a report. So once you refer to that particular agent or under, he has to approve it. Okay, when you suppose you have data, okay, you are referring the data to me. So I'll verify it's correct or not. So when I verify it, I'll just if it is correct, then I'll give an approval like you can proceed. Okay, that kind of a thing we have in the policy as well. Okay, once you refer, then you need to approve it. Transaction is waiting for the approval. Transaction is awaiting a batch process to complete. Nothing but scheduled in the sense like it basically in normal in our daily lifestyle as well. We'll schedule a meeting or we'll schedule some appointment. Okay, we are waiting for some process to complete. So similarly, it's like that. Okay, when you schedule a particular policy or a transaction, it's waiting to the batch process to complete. That will be worked. I mean, like that will be down in the downstream system in the back end. Okay. Transaction, transaction state. So nothing but there are few status like states like open, closed, and committed. Okay. What does open mean? Indicates work is currently being performed on the transaction and data has not been committed. Okay. The data has been entered in the policy and the transaction. Okay. That it has not been committed still. Transaction is not yet committed. The transactions are in open state when are approved, declined, pending, referred, and scheduled status. Okay. When is this in approved? When the transaction state is in open, like when the policy status or transaction state is approved, declined, pending, referred, or scheduled, then only this transaction state will be in open. Any transaction initiated after the date of an open transaction do not contain any changes requested on the policy for that open transaction. Nothing but suppose after an effective date or expiration date, it has been open. Okay, then user cannot do any changes in that particular transaction. If the open transaction is closed, however, the system reconcile all the changes for the transaction to any subsequent transaction effective after the effective date of the closed transaction. Suppose if the user has done the changes and user closed it, that means he cannot open and again do the changes again. Close indicates work is completed for the transaction on the platform, but not in other downstream system. Nothing but a user closes his particular transaction or policy, okay, for the time being. But that means he completed all his work, but that doesn't mean that he has in the backend or in the downstream it's not been closed. Okay, a transaction is in a closed state when its transaction state is in status is in closed. Okay, transaction status will be closed and even transaction state will be closed. Then only you can see this. Okay. When the user closes the transaction, the system completely reconciles data changes from the transaction to the policy image. The system reconciles these changes to all the open and closed transaction, and the changes are subsequently represented in the policy. As a result, you cannot close the transaction if other transactions after its effective date has been committed. In addition, you can use close the changes to start new transaction. You cannot commit those transactions until the closed transaction is committed. Suppose after closed transaction, you are performing some other transaction. Okay. In that case, you can do the changes and you can commit it. You can do the changes, but once you wanted to commit the transaction after the closed transaction, whatever you have done, you need to commit the closed whichever is pending to commit. I mean, like for example, I have done first transaction is like endorse. Okay, I made it as a closed state.
Okay.
I haven't committed it.
Right.
Okay. Next, I have done other transaction and I made a changes. But once I want to commit this second transaction, then I need to close the first. I need to commit the first transaction. Then only I can commit the second transaction.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Committed. Notified downstream once the policy images has been updated. When the transaction state and the policy status is committed. You must close the transaction before you commit it. The transaction cannot be committed if others have closed the transaction effective priority. Nothing but whatever I told you before. Suppose if you have any other pending transaction either closed which are not committed. Okay, first you need to commit those and then commit the last transaction.
Yeah.
Effective date rule. So what does it mean? Effective date rule determines which transaction type have editable effective date and who can edit them. If a user enters an effective date outside of the established rule, the system produces are doing a particular transaction and you have given the date as an out of box. Okay, out of sequence you have given the date. Then in that case, it will produce an error message. It will not execute it.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello. Hello. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You got cut off.
Hello?
Hello.
Mega, can you hear me?
Yeah. I
Okay.
can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. That means like if you do the effective date as an out of box, then it will produce an error message. Okay. So in that case, you need to follow some of the rules for giving an effective date.
Yeah.
Out of the box effective date. Effective date rules are completely customizable. However, transact does not have some of the out of the box effective date rules. For some transaction effective date cannot be before inception date of the policy. Okay. Nothing but before an effective date. Okay. Before the final audit date of any term, after the expiration date of a policy. See, like these are three rules. Okay, inception is nothing but an effective date.
Yeah.
The user cannot give any date before the effective date, but user cannot give the date which is also after the effective date.
Yeah. I expiration.
You have to give in between the effective date and the expiration date.
Huh.
So agent can only enter the effective date within 13 days of the current date. Okay. Agent user. Consumer user can only begin the transaction effective date on the current date. You cannot write new transaction during the last period of a term.
Huh.
So transaction type. These are some of the transaction types. Okay. These are some of the rules for the particular transaction type. Book policy. Okay. The effective date defaults to the effective date of the term being booked. User cannot modify it. It would be defaulted. Okay. In cancel transaction, none. The effective date does not default to any date. User can give whatever the date he wants.
Yeah.
Cancel pending transaction, none. User can give the effective date whatever he wants. It will not be defaulted. In endorse also, if it's same. Final audit. The effective date prefixed with a list of policy terms available for the audit. User can select the desired date. Okay, there will be a drop down and there will be few dates will be available for you. Okay, you need to select one of them in the final audit transaction. Information transaction. It will not be defaulted to any date. It will be a blank. You can select any date. Intermediate audit. The effective date prefills with the policies and same. Like a few dates will be available in the drop down. You need to select it. Okay. Issue policy. The effective date default to the effective date of the term being used. User cannot modify it. That means what are the previous effective date is there? No? The effective date will be defaulted to it. You cannot edit it. Okay.
Yeah.
New, none. It will not be defaulted. You can select manually. No, non-renew. The effective date will be defaulted to the expiration date of the current term. User cannot modify it. What are the last transaction is there now? That expiration date will be defaultly set to the effective date. You cannot edit it. Reinstate. The effective date defaults to the cancellation effective date. of the policy, user cannot modify it unless the last functionality is enabled. That
Yeah.
means that what are the previous transaction cancellation is there, right? The cancellation effective date will be same, registered effective date will be same as it is. You cannot edit it unless it is the last functional.
Right.
Okay, reissue. See, these are some of the dates rules. Okay, you can revise it. You cannot repeat each. Schedule date rule. So what is the schedule date rule? Much like a fixed date rule, the schedule date rule determines the rules for entering the schedule dates on transaction. Okay. If a user enters the schedule date, outside of the established rule, the system produces an error when the user tries to start the transaction. Nothing but when you're giving out of the box, okay? Even this will produce an error.
Yeah.
So what are the some of the rules? So before the current date of an effective date of the transaction, what you cannot be, I mean, like you cannot give like before the current date of the effective date, you cannot give. After the expiration date, you cannot give. Okay. Reason code rules. Reason code rules are determined which transaction type allows user to select the reason code, who can select specific reason code. Okay.
Yeah.
Reason code rules are completely customizable. However, transact does not does have some out of the box rule for reason code. Each transaction type displays the following reason codes in the reason list. What? Book policy or CD. Okay. Cancel for the cancel. For the agent, it will display the non-payment insured request. You can see in the C details. Okay. You can see non-payment and insured request itself in the drop down. Okay, for assistant, you can see non-payment and underwriting reasons. See details you can see. In auditor, you cannot see any other details in the drop down. Okay. Reason code is nothing but when you are doing any particular transaction, you can see the reason code rule. For example, you are doing a particular end of transaction. Okay, for the reason code, if you wanted to select any reason why you are performing that particular transaction, you can select it. This is an option.
Right.
It's not mandated for you to give the reason.
Okay.
But these are some of the options available for the particular transaction.
Yeah.
Okay. The cancel, suppose if you logged in as an agent, you can see the three in the drop down, like CD details, insured request, non-payment. If you logged in as an assistant and you are trying to do a cancel transaction, and for the in the pop-up for the reason code rule, you can see like C details, underwriting reason, and non-payment. Okay. For auditor, you cannot see anything. For manager, you can see like C details, underwriting reason, non-payment. For underwriter, you can see C details, underwriting reason, non-payment. Whereas for cancel pending, these are some more. For endorse, you can see this. The reason code does not display for consumer users. Okay. Only C details you can see. Like for the remaining transaction as well, you can see only this. For renew, no reason codes are available for the renew transaction. Policy editing rule. When you can edit the policy while you are doing a particular transaction. Okay. When a user starts any starts an editable transaction, transacts open the policy for editing. When a user starts an uneditable transaction, the user can view a read-only version of the policy. Editable or non-editable transaction type. You should set all transactions for which you do not want the policy to be editable, to be read-only, to facilitate the transact notifies external product type when a user is viewing a non-editable transaction. Out of the box, transact rule designate each transaction type as editable or non-editable. So which transactions you can edit the policy and which transaction you cannot edit the policy. These are some of them. Okay.
Yeah.
For book policy transaction, it will be editable. For cancel, it will not, it is non-editable. The
Yeah.
policy will be non-editable. User cannot copy many of the changes in the policy. Okay.
Yeah.
Cancel pending, non-editable. Endorse, editable. Final audit, editable. Information, editable. Interim audit, editable. Issue policy, editable. New, editable. Non-renew, non-editable. Reinstate, non-editable. Reissue, editable. Renew, editable. Renewal change, editable. Resign, cancel pending, non-editable. Resign, endorse, non-editable. Resigned, non-editable. Revise, editable. Revise, all revise will be editable. Rewrite is also editable. Void, both will be non-editable.
Yeah.
About rules. Suppose you have done any other transaction, okay?
Yeah.
Especially for the, okay, you have done the changes and you don't want those changes to be, you are in between. Okay, you haven't committed your transaction. You are in between between the changes. You have done some of the changes, you don't, and now you don't want the changes to be done. You wanted to revert back or you wanted to cancel
Yeah.
to the previous, then you can do this abort. Like before the transaction name, you can see abort symbol.
Yes.
What does it do? The abort process cancels the initiated transaction before it is committed.
Yeah.
If you commit, you cannot abort that a transaction. Before committing, you can abort that.
Yeah.
So agent can abort pending transactions only. Assistant can abort pending transactions only. So these are some of the rules. Managers can abort all open transactions. Okay.
Yeah.
Rules for what? Rules for completing this particular transaction. Rules for some of the rules for completing this particular transaction. Okay. Transact define the several rules for when the transaction can be completed. That is close. Who can complete them? Okay. Closing transaction. Transaction can be closed under the following circumstances. User can close the transaction. They have the authority to start if the policy modifications are within their product specified binding authority and the transaction is scheduled or pending. User can close refer transaction if the policy modifications are within the product specified binding authority. The user closing the transaction is not the user who refers the transaction, and the content closing is the transaction that has a higher context than the context that referred the transaction. All user can close the approved transaction. Declined transaction cannot be closed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Suppose the user wanted to close the particular transaction. The user can close if the policy is in approved status. Okay. Or if it is a declined status, then user cannot close it. And what are the referred policies or suppose if it is a referred policy, then that respective user whom you referred, like an underwriter or an agent or manager, they have to approve your particular transaction, then only you can close it.
Yeah.
Okay. Suppose like the first thing you need to check is like the transaction is in pending or scheduled or not. Like if it is scheduled or pending, then they have an authority to edit it and to approve it or not. Okay. All the users will not be having the right to approve the like close the policy or approve the policy.
Yeah.
Okay. In addition, the rules of the transact flow process initiate additional processes for the certain transaction types. Specifically, when the system closes the transaction, it may modify the policy status or request that a product receive a new policy number. It may initiate additional changes. So what are those? These are some of the transaction types. And new policy status, new policy number, and other data changes. These are detailed, okay? For example, like if the policy is booked, the new policy status will be as booked.
Yeah.
It will not generate any new policy number and no changes will be there. For the cancel transaction, the policy status will be cancelled. And will it generate a new policy number? No. The system sets the policy cancel date to the transaction effective date.
Yeah.
Okay, only this is the changes it will be done. Cancel pending. The status will be cancel pending. It will not produce a new policy number. The system sets policy pending date to the transaction effective date. What are the previous transaction effective date? It will set to that. And
Yeah.
will it generate a new policy number? I mean, like new status, new policy status? No. The previous whatever is there, it will be the same.
Yeah.
Okay. New policy number? No. Any other data changes? No. Okay. Final audit. These are how the sum of the transaction does it. It does.
Yeah.
You can go through it. If you have a doubt, you can ask them.
Okay.
You can read it. This. If you have doubts, you can ask right away. I'll skip for 2 minutes.
Okay. You can just explain this real estate thing. Baki I read.
Reinstate. First one. First one, right? Second one, right?
In one, yeah.
Okay. Reinstate. New policy status. Originally, the policy status before the policy will be cancelled. Okay. Once user has cancelled the policy itself, then only user can perform the reinstate transaction.
Yeah.
Okay. The new policy status will be depending on this. And will it generate a new policy number? No. And what are the data changes it will do? When configuring reinstate transaction to allow for the lab, user can configure whether to reapply the transaction offset by the cancel or not. Reapply the transaction. When configure reapply transaction, which is defaultly configuration that occurred during the last period, will be moved forward to the initial reinstate opportunity. Suppose you have done the reinstate transaction normally, then you can commit it. But when you are doing the reinstate transaction in the last period of time, okay, then you need to check whether the previous any other reinstate transactions are done or not. Before this current reinstate, previous transaction, any reinstate is done or not. Okay.
Yeah.
You need to check whether the particular reinstate transaction is committed or not. If it is not committed, then user cannot commit this particular reinstate transaction which he wants it to do now. Because it is in the last period time.
Yeah.
Like the it depends on the previous transaction. Does it reapply or not? I mean, like reapply in the sense like previous transaction is open, it's not yet committed. Okay, it's still in pending. Then you need to reapply the transaction for the cancel, and then you need to commit it.
Okay.
So you need to check previously reinstate is not committed, then you cannot commit this. In order to commit, you need to commit the previous reinstate transaction. Then only what are the changes you are doing in the current reinstate transaction, those will be applied.
Okay.
The rollback process rolls back a committed transaction and all subsequent transactions. Okay, this is available for all the transactions. When the system removes the transaction, it adds an activity log to the policy and stores a copy of that policy image. This process does not roll back the data already posted to the downstream system. As a result, this process should be used as a testing tool only. When a transaction on an actual policy must be reversed, use the resigned endorse transaction. Suppose if you wanted to roll back the changes you have done.
Yeah.
In this case, you need to use the resigned endorse transaction. Okay, this rollback option is available only for the resigned endorse transaction. No other transaction is available.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically while you are doing a policy, suppose some people what will do now, like suppose if it is an existing policy, they duplicate that particular policy and check whether the system is working fine as expected or not. They will not do the changes in the existing policy.
Right.
Okay, suppose one Jira has come up in your bucket. Okay, like this particular issue is coming up, existing defect.
Yeah.
Okay. That is not in your, I mean, like that is not in the current, that is an existing product issue. Okay, they have provided you the policy number where that particular issue is coming up.
Yeah.
But you should not do a changes in that particular policy because that policy where the issue is coming up. If you do the changes in that particular policy, then you cannot track down where the issue is coming up and why the issue is coming up.
Yes.
So what we will do now, you will just duplicate that particular policy number they provided and you'll be checking it.
Yeah.
For testing purpose only, you'll be duplicating it and checking it. You'll not do the changes or anything. If you wanted to do any changes, you need to do it in the duplicate, not in the original, actual policy.
Right. Yeah.
Suppose if you wanted to revert the any changes you have done, you need to click on the return end or transaction.
Yeah.
Transact request. So these are some of the requests which are available for the transaction.
Okay.
What does it do? Transact request interacts with the server to accomplish a certain task in Transact. Okay. These requests are initiated by an event and rules in Transact and an individual product. Some rules launch an additional request event rules and Transact requests are completely customizable. So these are some of the transaction requests.
Yeah.
Okay. Abort, check in, check out, close, commit, get changed. What are the changes we have done? Those changes you'll be getting on the output screen.
Yeah.
Get policy status. That means suppose you want a policy status of that particular transaction, then you need to use this request. Okay, get reason code set. So these are some of the requests. Perform close request. Common request activity. Okay, basically we do in our daily life.
Yeah.
So some transact requests initiate activity that requires a workflow of their own. Some of these activities initiate other activities. This workflow must be completed before the request processing can continue. So basically, it should be like completed status. Then only you can close it. Okay, request activities with individual workflow. So these are some of the request activities have their own workflow.
Okay.
So this is the work. When executed, the perform close activity allows the workflow below. See the workflow note for the description. So out of sequence transaction, basically if yes, then out of sequence reconcile and then return. If invalid, then it will execute a close transaction event and then loop report. So before that, perform close, set flags in transaction, set status and execute status event and check whether it's out of sequence or not. If yes, then return. If not, then event close transaction event. What does it do? In detail, yeah. Set flag in transaction. So set the value at the location specified the transaction.state and section to config file. Okay. Set state. Set the value at the location specified of the transaction status. And if we just check the status, like if the true or false. Okay. Execute the status set event. set the value at the location specified. It will execute, like if so as per the condition, it will execute. Overwatch determines whether the transaction is an out of sequence transaction. Execute close transaction. So it will check whether the condition is applied like closed or not. If yes, if the user wanted to close it, then yes. If not, then it will not be closing.
Yeah.
Return. Okay. Next one is perform commit. Similar way. If this one will commit, that one will close the policy. This one will commit the policy. Same similar way, the perform commit transaction open or not. If you check whether the transaction is open and performed, if yes, then close directly. If no, then it will set flagged in transaction, set status, execute status event, and execute commit transaction event, and then return.
Yeah.
These are in detail. That's it for today.
Okay. So, Trip, will you send me the question for interview today only so that I can prepare in the weekend?
Okay.
Okay.